All right, so we're back, and today we're going to kind of dive into the world of Solana. We've got this pretty interesting article from Crypto News. It was published just a few days ago on December 26th, 2024. And basically, it's exploring this idea of like whether or not Solana, SOL as most people call it, could actually reach like 1,000 euros by 2025. And I mean, that's a pretty bold prediction, right? Especially when you think about how Solana has been kind of all over the place recently.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really interesting question. And, the article really highlights that by talking about how Solana almost broke $200 on Christmas Day. But then, like, immediately after that, it dropped like 4% the next day. So, it really shows you just how much excitement there is, but also like how unpredictable the market can be.
Yeah, definitely keeps things interesting. So the article talks about some bearish signals that might be behind this dip. What really kind of stood out to you there?
Well, they mentioned these like moving averages, the 21-day and the 50-day ones. Basically, they're like indicators that traders use to see what the trend is. And right now, those averages are saying there's like some short-term pressure to sell, which, might explain why the price has dropped.
Okay, so like even though it rallied on Christmas,
Yeah.
some traders might be cashing out or just like hesitant to buy right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it. The article also mentions that the Federal Reserve decided to only do two rate cuts next year in 2025. And that's made some investors like a little more cautious about riskier assets, like Solana, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if safer investments are suddenly looking better because interest rates are higher,
Hmm.
it's understandable why people might pull back from crypto.
Huh.
But the article doesn't say it's all doom and gloom, right?
Oh, definitely not. There are some really strong arguments for why Solana could do well too. Like they point out that the US economy is actually doing pretty great. And that usually makes investors more comfortable with higher risk stuff, like, cryptocurrencies.
So it's kind of like a sign that people are feeling good about the market overall.
Mhm.
Like if they're confident about the economy, maybe they're more willing to try out crypto.
Exactly. Yeah. Plus, there's the whole political side of things, which adds another layer to it. The article mentions that incoming U.S. President Donald Trump has been pretty vocal about supporting the crypto industry.
Yeah, that's true. Although it's hard to say exactly what he'll do policy-wise. But, he's known for deregulation. So maybe that means he'll take a more hands-off approach, which could bring in more investment.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you think about it, a more crypto-friendly environment could encourage like big institutional investors, like hedge funds or even pension funds, to start putting money into crypto.
Yeah, that would be huge. But let's get back to what the article actually predicts for Solana's price. They say it could hit $260 soon and maybe even reach Ethereum's market cap eventually. Doesn't that seem a little overly optimistic?
Well, it's definitely ambitious, but it's important to remember they're talking about market cap, not just the price of a single coin.
Ah, right. Can you explain that for our listeners? Those terms can get kind of confusing sometimes.
Sure. So think of Solana like a company, and each SOL is like a share in that company. Market cap is basically the total value of all those shares together. So even if the price of one SOL is lower than one Ethereum, Solana could still be worth more overall if there are way more SOL shares out there.
Yay, that's a really helpful way to think about it. So it's like comparing all the apples in the world to all the oranges. The price of one apple might be different than one orange, but the total value of all apples could be close to the total value of all oranges. So what's making people so optimistic about Solana's potential?
Well, the article talks about these on-chain metrics, which are basically measurements of how healthy and active the Solana network is. For example, transaction volumes are going up, which means more and more people are actually using Solana.
So that's a good sign, right? More transactions means more people are using it.
Yeah, exactly. And another important metric is something called total value locked, or TVL, which is basically how much money is locked up in Solana-based projects. A higher TVL shows that people are confident about Solana's future.
So people are not just using Solana, they're actually putting their money into it, which shows they believe it'll be around for a while. That's pretty interesting.
It is, yeah. And all of this, the good metrics, plus Solana's technical advantages like how fast and cheap it is, all of that contributes to the positive outlook that the article is presenting.
But you mentioned earlier that Ethereum is also expected to rally even though it already has a bigger market cap. So it sounds like both of them are kind of competing for the top spot.
Well, the article doesn't really frame it as a competition. It's more like they both have the potential to grow at the same time. So right now, Solana's market cap is around $90 billion, while Ethereum is way bigger at like $400 billion. Both of them are expected to go up in value, but it's hard to say by how much or how fast.
So it's kind of like two people climbing the same mountain but on different paths.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it really shows how dynamic the crypto market is. Things are always changing. But even with all this positive stuff, the article mentions that Solana is actually trading at a 30% discount compared to its highest point back in November.
A discount, huh? Maybe that means now's a good time to buy in.
Well, some investors might think so. Buying the dip is pretty common in crypto, but you always got to be careful and think about the risks involved. And that brings us to an important point. While the article is pretty optimistic, it's also really important to understand the potential problems that could stop Solana from reaching €1,000.
That's a great point. So the next part of our deep dive, let's unpack some of those potential risks.
It's easy to get kind of caught up in all the excitement about potential price surges. But we got to remember that the crypto market is like super unpredictable. What looks like a good time to buy today could totally change tomorrow.
Yeah, that's so true. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that 4% drop Solana had right after Christmas. So what are some of the things that could stop Solana from hitting those big price targets?
Well, one big thing is competition. There are always new crypto projects popping up all the time. So Solana's not the only one out there. Like Ethereum, for example, it's still innovating and attracting developers, even though it's already huge.
Right, so it's not just about how well Solana does on its own, it's also about how it compares to all the other cryptocurrencies out there.
Exactly, yeah. There are all these others so-called Ethereum killers trying to take over, and they all have their own special features and advantages. So Solana has to keep innovating and showing why it's better than the rest.
It's like a race where the finish line keeps moving further away. What other challenges does Solana have to deal with?
Well, Solana's had some problems in the past, like network outages, and people
Yeah.
were worried about it being too centralized. And even though they've tried to fix those things, it could still make some investors nervous.
It's like that saying, trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. Solana needs to prove that it's reliable and secure if it wants people to use it.
Definitely. And we can't forget about the whole regulatory thing. That's still a big question mark. Governments all over the world are still trying to figure out how to regulate crypto, and their decisions could have a huge impact on the market.
It's kind of like a sword hanging over everyone's head. What if a big country like the US suddenly decides to make really strict rules? That could totally shake up the whole crypto world.
Yeah, for sure. All this uncertainty about regulations just makes things even more complicated for investors.
So with all these potential problems, is it even worth investing in Solana?
Well, that's a decision each person has to make based on their own situation and how much risk they're willing to take. There's no doubt that Solana has some great things going for it. It's fast and scalable, and transactions are pretty cheap.
Yeah, those are some pretty good features,
Mhm.
especially for developers and people who are looking for a better alternative to Ethereum.
That Solana's got a growing ecosystem of apps, those decentralized applications, which makes it even more attractive.
But we also have to think about the competition, the technical issues, and the whole regulatory uncertainty. It seems like one of those high-risk, high-reward situations, right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. That's why it's so important for anyone thinking about investing in Solana to do their research, figure out how much risk they're comfortable with, and never invest more than they can afford to lose. The crypto market is just naturally volatile.
That's really good advice. It's easy to get caught up in all the hype. But it's important to remember that not every cryptocurrency is going to be successful. Speaking of hype, we haven't really talked about how Donald Trump being president could affect the crypto industry.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's a really interesting example of how political decisions can impact the crypto market. We know Trump has said he supports crypto, but the question is, what will he actually do about it?
He's known for getting rid of regulations.
Hmm.
So some people think he might just leave the crypto industry alone and let it do its own thing.
Yeah, that's definitely one possibility. But he could also surprise us and do something specific to encourage crypto innovation and adoption.
Imagine if he gave tax breaks to crypto businesses or made regulations easier for blockchain projects. That would be a huge boost for the whole industry.
It totally would. If there were more clear regulations and the government was supportive, it could bring in tons of money from big institutional investors.
That's a really interesting thought. What would that kind of investment do for Solana and the rest of the crypto market?
Well, it could potentially push prices up across the board, including Solana's price. We might also see blockchain technology getting used more and more in different industries.
Imagine using Solana to pay for groceries or keep track of your medical records, or even vote in elections online.
Those are some really cool ideas. But we also have to think about the potential downsides. More government involvement could also mean stricter rules. And some people say that could stifle innovation and go against the whole idea of crypto being decentralized.
It's a tough balance. We want crypto to become mainstream, but we
Yeah.
don't want to lose the things that make it so revolutionary.
Exactly. It's one of the many things that make the crypto space so interesting and unpredictable.
So we've looked at Solana's recent performance, the arguments for and against it growing in the future,
Hmm.
and how political decisions could play a role. What does all this mean for our listeners who are thinking about investing in Solana?
Yeah, it feels like we've gone through a lot, from Solana's price swings to all the different things that can affect the market. So, what are the big takeaways here? What should our listeners really remember?
Well, the article makes a good case for Solana having a lot of potential. But like we've been saying, there are definitely risks too. The crypto market is, just naturally volatile and unpredictable.
Yeah, it's definitely not for someone who can't handle a little risk.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So before anyone invests in Solana or any cryptocurrency, really, there are some important questions they need to ask themselves.
Okay, so what kind of questions are we talking about?
Well, first of all, do you actually understand the technology behind Solana? Have you looked into what it can do besides just, you know, hoping the price goes up?
Right. You got to look beyond the hype and see what problems it's actually trying to solve. Exactly. And then think about your investment goals and how much risk you're comfortable with. Are you looking for a quick profit or are you in it for the long term?
And I think the most important question is, can you afford to lose the money you invest?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You should never invest in crypto if it means putting your financial well-being at risk.
This whole deep dive has really made me think. It's a good reminder that even though there's potential to make a lot of money in crypto, you got to be smart about it and not get carried away.
I agree. The more you know, the better, especially with crypto because it's always changing.
So to all our listeners out there, keep learning, stay informed, and make decisions that are right for you based on your own goals and how much risk you can handle.
And hey, who knows? Maybe Solana will hit that 1,000 euro target in 2025. Or maybe something totally different will happen. That's what makes the crypto market so exciting. You never really know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it's definitely a wild ride. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Solana, everyone. Until next time, happy investing and don't forget to do your own research.